We'll do it live.
These are the armies of the night.
Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
The Furies. The Boppers. The Hi-Hats. The Lizzies. The Turnbull ACs. The Gramercy Riffs.
Riffs! Yeah, right!
And these are the Warriors.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Cinematic Lounge. This is not easy to do. Hi Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, man.
Obviously, what are we talking about tonight?
We're talking about the Warriors.
The Warriors.
And I'm ready to come out and play, man.
These ponies are awful. Heineken ponies. Who would think of that? Just us. Oh, let me turn my light on.
Yeah.
All right. Yes, we're doing 1979's The Warriors.
Directed by the absolutely amazing Walter Hill.
We got a lot to talk about on this one. Because I've been watching, I went crazy watching documentaries and stuff. And
Some good
I
ones,
think
too.
point that mic up a little bit towards your mouth. There you go. Yeah, you
Little
know, I
better?
have the DVD of the comic book version, or what's called the Ultimate
Director's Cut. I have that one too.
That one's okay, but
Yeah,
the new
it's-
Blu-ray one that just came out
From
is,
Arrow?
Yeah.
I'm going to throw this out here. This is obviously not in any way sponsored, but Arrow is great. Like they are doing for like cult movies what Criterion does for like prestige films.
They do. They put a lot of stuff out. There's a
Yeah.
lot of extras. There were a lot of extras. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's probably all the same ones that are on the DVD.
Some of them are, but no, there's a bunch of new ones.
Yeah.
Actually,
You went through them all?
when we decided to do the Warriors, I had to sit down and really go deep.
Okay. Well, I can say that I saw this in the movie theater when it came out in
I did
1979
not.
with my friend Tommy Sacramona. And, you know, the hype on this was if you go, you're going to get killed.
Pretty much.
I mean, that was, and we watched this, and I'm wearing my colors here from Baltimore right now. But originally, we saw it in Brockton, Massachusetts.
Nice.
Okay, which is a gang hub. I mean,
really?
Yeah.
So like there was a legitimate chance that
There was well, I mean, that was the hype
There
on the
would have
movie.
been some
but I
people there.
I actually don't think. I think that was way more hype than actually happened.
Well, what I read, just to kind of touch base on this right out of the gate here, what I had read was that there were a few fights that happened outside of theaters, and there was one case where some gang members had gone to see the movie, and then on the way home, maybe in Boston, on the T or something, they had ended up getting into a fight and killing some random dude.
Wow.
And somehow or another, this turned into, you're going to get murdered at the Warriors if you go to see it.
Well, they were worried because while they were shooting it, there was issues with gangs and
Yeah,
stuff.
oh,
They
yeah.
used gangs for protection of their equipment, which is pretty
Yeah.
interesting. They had to take their Warriors leather off when they had lunch in Coney Island because they didn't want to offend.
The real Coney Island
Yeah, so
gangs.
stuff was actually happening. But I can
yeah.
say this. When Tommy and I walked out of that movie in 1979, we wanted to beat the shit out of anybody. And, you know, look at it. I wasn't going to fight anybody, but it was such a... Because I don't think I caught... Obviously, back then, there wasn't internet. There wasn't all this hype on movies long before it came out. So this thing comes out, and nobody really knew what the hell it was about except for the gang issue. Like, there's going to be trouble. Then we went and saw the film, and holy shit, it was a revelation.
Oh my gosh, Walter Hill was at his peak.
Well, he definitely peaked with this one, I think.
I mean, I think he had some other good movies after this, but when you consider he did Hard Times, The Driver, which I actually rewatched again recently, and
Ryan
that's just
O'Neal,
amazing.
good one.
And then this one, and then he goes on to do like Southern Comfort, and
he
bunch
wrote
of them.
Alien,
and
he created Ellen Ripley.
Yeah,
he turned that character from a male character to female, named it after his mother. His mother was named Ellen Ripley.
Oh wow! I didn't
So
know
yeah,
that.
I mean, he with the stuff I'm reading about him, watching about him with this film, and the creativity he pulled together to make it happen with not a lot of money.
Yeah.
In nighttime shooting in New York City.
Yeah, that was the thing.
In not the greatest neighborhoods.
No.
And the stuff they pulled off with the nighttime shooting and the subway shooting, all that stuff that we could, if you've seen anything on the Warriors, there's nothing we're going to add to this that hasn't been said.
Right.
The only thing we're going to add is our appreciation and what we saw. And after rewatching it, I watched it with Maria the other night, I had the exact same exhilaration that I felt when I saw it with Tommy Sacramona the first time. Because it's a combination of his wide lens shooting, choosing when to cut tight on people, especially those baseball furies. They really hit it hard with that. And then the slow motion strewn in there just enough to give you some iconic scenes or some fight scenes that end. Especially in that bathroom scene with the roller,
the most amazing.
The roller skating dudes, which you think about, how could those guys fight in roller skates? It's ridiculous.
But it's only one guy.
I know, it's one guy.
It's technically
but still,
only one
it's like
guy.
he
Everybody
immediately got
goes
knocked out.
They're always like the roller skating gang, and I'm always like, it's just one guy.
Well, I thought it was a whole gang until I watched it. I go, it's just the one.
Well, you
dude.
remember the guy on the skates
because he looked like a disco dude with the overalls and all that. All right,
anyway,
what is it you want to talk about? Where do you want to go with this? Because
so
it could be anything.
I'm going to start with where I discovered this, and I've mentioned this before. Once again, probably on a Saturday afternoon somewhere, I caught the second half of this on TV.
Okay.
Right? I started in the middle of it, and it sucked me in right from the get-go. I think it was somewhere around the Baseball Fury sequence. And then I found it at the local video store, and I watched the whole thing.
So you're just watching TV, and it pops up?
Well,
you never heard about it?
Never heard of it. Never heard of anything. Didn't even know what it was called. This is back in analog TV. It's not like it tells you what it is and what year it came out.
The good old days.
Yeah, exactly. But it blew me away. And what it was I had, then you pull out like the TV guide.
Yeah.
Actually, the Washington Post used to have this really great TV guide.
Yeah.
And so I was
the grid.
Yeah, the grid, exactly.
Yeah.
And anyway, so when I saw this movie, it blew me away. And then over time, it's one of these films that for whatever reason, I've probably seen it 20 times now. I keep coming back to it. And not that recently. It's funny how you get older, you say recently, and you're like, oh, well, that was really like 15 years ago.
Yeah, a long time.
The Charles here in Baltimore, they did like a midnight showing of it for like $5, and it was Friday and Saturday night.
No gang fights there?
No, but I went on Saturday night, went the second showing, and one of the managers, she came out and she was like, "Look, I know that this is a fun movie. I know we all love it, but you gotta keep it together."
Oh my God.
Basically, I guess Friday was so crazy with people yelling things and shouting at the theater or at the screen that it just got out of control. But what's amazing about this film, what I've always loved about this film is that it's a very kind of simple story, and it's based on this
hero's journey, a myth, but Greek myth.
Yeah, it's based on this Greek myth.
Got to get back home.
Exactly. It's
get through the hordes of getting home.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's all based on that. But it gets so detailed in a great way because it's kind of this like strange story, and it's all told in one night, and it's all these youth gangs, but yet they're portrayed kind of in a heroic manner. But it's also got all these like great little bits. Like it's kind of like a baseball game. Like it's laid out as a baseball game, not just because of the baseball furies, but there's literally, they have to fight one gang for each base.
9 people. Nine.
You've got Lynn Thigpen, who you only see her mouth, which is great because she has a very unique looking mouth and everything. Some people may remember her for at least from my generation, as from Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego?
No idea.
That was
she's
PBS.
She's passed away. She's and I guess somebody did an homage to this movie. Oh, John Wick. They do. I think they do an homage to that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But she's almost like a play-by-play or a Greek chorus.
Totally. Yep.
And so it really kind of
shot
puts it
super extreme close-up.
Oh gosh, yeah. And the funny thing is, David Patrick Kelly, the guy that plays Luther, the kind of the bad guy.
Yeah, bad guy.
Definitely. And he and she were in a play together. That's how they saw him and her in this play together in off Broadway or something. And then they cast them both. But she actually was kind of surprised when she went to see the rough cut, and she's like, "It's just my mouth," because there are photos.
She had no idea.
She had no idea, and there's photos of her in like a pinstripe kind of seersucker looking suit, and so she obviously, was in costume, and there's probably more to it. And then all it is just your mouth and your voice.
I was watching, one of the docs I watched today was a 3-panel doc. One guy in the middle, I guess, was a writer who worked with Walter Hill a lot. And a German female director who was also a stunt. Yeah. She did stunts as well. And another guy who was a director, raving about the choices that Walter Hill made from the way he shot this. I mentioned the wide angles. You look at that scene in the park, that very first scene, Can You Dig It scene.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact that they could corral, those are real gang people.
Oh, yeah, a lot of them are. Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they could corral them to get the actor to do the thing that he did. They originally had an actual gang leader who was
Yeah.
supposed to do that part. They couldn't find him.
Yeah, he just
He
disappeared.
got the part and he disappeared. So that actor come in, and that guy,
He kills it.
Cyrus, right?
Cyrus. Mm-hmm.
He killed it, and he got killed
Yeah.
for it. The stuff that Walter Hill pulled up, and she specifically talked about the scene, the DJ scene.
Mm-hmm.
And you can kind of see where he was, he ends up doing Streets of Fire.
Yeah.
And you can see that he is, that movie's all music. I mean, there's a lot of music in The Warriors.
Yeah.
And good music, good electronic stuff, creepy, that whole Wonder Wheel at the beginning with the creepy
Saul
thing.
Yorick's, his score is amazing.
I don't think it's Saul York.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Saul Yorick wrote the book. It's Barry DeVore.
Right. So
who also did the music in Exorcist 3 we just talked about.
He did?
Yeah.
There you go. little connection. And the way that music kind of sets the tone, it seems like a horror movie at the start with the creepy synthesizer music, and then there's a lot of rock in there and all kinds of other stuff, ultimately ending with Joe Walsh.
Oh, yeah, In the City, which he also wrote.
I think he wrote for this movie, right?
Yeah, well, Barry DeVore wrote the music, and I think Joe Walsh assisted on the, what do you call it? The lyrics.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he performed it.
Now, you see when he does Streets of Fire, he really nails shooting music in that film with the female lead. I forget her name right now.
Diane Lane.
How can I forget Diane Lane? So, he was on his way to that. But she was specifically calling out his shooting of that DJ, the wide shots for the fight scenes.
Yeah.
And she mentioned, you can see a lot of misses, but the fact is they're shooting it wide, so everybody had to rehearse properly.
Yeah.
And me and Tommy Sacramento, the thing that got us, and it happened again when I watched it this time, the Baseball Fury scene.
So good.
That's the first time where Ajax says, let's stop running for these wimps.
Yeah.
And let's just fight these guys.
Oh, yeah.
And that starts the movie on the fight. You realize these warriors are tough guys.
Yeah,
I mean, they really fight well.
Yeah, yeah.
And the way they shot it, they choreographed it. It was beautiful. It was lyrical. It was ballet.
Yep.
And tough at the same time with the bats and the whole thing. And then you get the orphans, and then you get,
Oh, yeah.
the woman gets involved. And,
Yeah, oh, yeah. And I mean, she's basically, Mercedes Rule is basically like, she's like a siren,
Well, I'm talking about the other lady.
Oh, you're talking about the girl gang.
The girl
The
gang.
Lizzies.
No. I'm talking about the woman who Swan falls in love with.
Oh, Deborah Van Valkenburgh. Yeah, Mercy.
Her.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah.
Like, she's
They're
fantastic.
all the women. The Lizzies.
Yeah. And it is funny too, because like this movie, it's like, you talk about that scene with the Baseball Furies, and it is so great because one of the things I like about that is because they fight kind of the lower level gang, like the orphans, right? They're kind of, she even calls them, speaking of the baseball stuff, she even calls them one of the minor league teams,
right?
So there's that kind of,
the DJ says that.
Yeah, the DJ says that. But then when they see the Baseball Furies and like the Yankee pinstripes, they're like, these guys are for real, right? And what I love is that scene is they run from them, and then there's that shot of them coming up, just seeming to come up right out of the
baseball players.
Yeah,
come up over the horizon,
over the
city horizon, the urban
sidewalk, basically.
Sidewalk.
And then they're after them, and those tracking shots, and I love the way that the Baseball Furies seem to be so like paced.
Yeah,
right. They're not sprinting; they're just like, we're gonna run.
And they're wearing
down.
cleats.
I know. Which seems crazy when you're running through the city, but if you're in a fight, having cleats on would be pretty great.
Good.
But then it's like so great where like, it's funny. Andrew Laszlo, who was the DP on this, was just amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done a bunch of amazing. And he was talking about how like during that whole sequence in the thing, he was just hanging lights in the trees.
Right.
Like randomly.
Yeah, and you see them in the shots. And
Yeah.
they make sense.
Yeah.
The other thing he did, which I thought was, again, all genius going on
Yeah.
here. They decide to have a rainstorm at the very beginning.
Yes.
To set up the night, so that then they could spray down the streets to give it that reflection, so lights are reflecting off that.
And
it's
that
that
is-
kind of like deep level thinking.
Yeah.
And I got a vibe, watching the people talk about Walter Hill and how he handled everything, that he was taking ideas from everybody.
Well-
Wouldn't shut anybody out. And the biggest thing with the bottle thing, that came from the actor.
Yeah.
The actor pulled that thing off.
Yeah, he just kind of did that on the day. And Hill even says, I didn't really give him much direction. I was just like, come up with something.
And he goes
And
onto the boardwalk, grabs 3 bottles, and
Yeah.
he's doing that thing.
And he was
It's
talking about how, like, when he was living in New York as a working actor, he's obviously pretty
just,
poor.
Hey, some creep.
He's
Yeah.
like some weird guy.
Yeah.
But, one of the big things was, talk about, like, handling things on the fly is Thomas Waits, the guy who plays the Fox, who gets thrown into.
He was the original love interest for.
Yeah, and there was Mercy, and there was no. He was actually supposed to be kind of the main guy.
Yeah.
And then they realized that there was no chemistry there, and he apparently was like fighting them on the set.
Yeah, he was having trouble.
And so they were just like, well, fine. And it's funny, if you go back and you watch the scenes where he's running down the stairs with Mercy.
Holding hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy's always kind of looking away.
Well, once it becomes a stuntman. It becomes a stuntman. They get him off the set.
Yeah.
Stuntman does it. The other thing is, logistically, Walter Hill had to figure out, because Fox was the one who saw Luther shoot.
Yes.
So he's the one guy that saw, right? Now, the other warriors figured out when the Lizzies go after them, and they go, they shot Cyrus, right? They figured it out. But then he had to figure out how to connect.
Sure.
And that's that scene at the end with the riffs where they go, well, this other guy, hey, right here, he saw.
They bring in one of the
rogues. No, it wasn't a rogue. Was it a rogue? Maybe it was. I don't know.
he was one of Luther's gang.
Oh, he was.
Yeah. And here's the funny thing is he looks really different. I'm not even sure if we ever saw him with.
No, that's what I'm saying. He had to do something to connect that logic.
Yeah, to make it work.
Because he got rid of that actor.
Yeah.
And again, that started and the other thing they talked about is then as an audience member, you realize, hey, any one of these guys could die at any minute. It raised the stakes of this group that you're traveling with.
Yeah, and you're starting to really like.
Right.
And that's a great thing because, he is obviously a major guy. He's speaking a lot. He's having the conversations. He's in, parlay with the orphans and all that stuff. And, he seems to be the one who's like, actually thinking about things and not just reacting.
Totally.
And then all of a sudden, and that is, I'm sorry. And it's obvious how they do it and everything, but that is still, it's a great edit. It is a great way to get a guy run over by a subway train. He throws him in there and it's like they do the flashing lights. And then I remember seeing that as a kid and just being like, whoa.
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone. And then secondly is, Ajax.
Yeah.
Because now after the baseball bat scene, and I'm going to take that baseball bat and I'm going to shove it up your ass and turn you into a popsicle.
Yeah.
You're like, this is the guy. Everybody's rooting for this guy.
Yeah.
Now, is he a dick? Yeah, total dick. And he kind of got what he deserved when he went after and attacked that woman, Mercedes Rule.
Yeah.
But still, when he gets taken out, you're like, oh my God, my favorite guy just got... He's gone.
He's another guy that gets gone.
He's gone, and he should have been gone because he did a horrible thing.
Yeah.
And even Walter Hill's like, oh, I think I made a mistake. He was because James Remar was great.
Oh God, James Remar is
wimps.
Great.
I mean, they dropped the F bomb, the F word way too much, but you couldn't do that now. But back then, it was like, okay, whatever. And he was like, that's the guy. That's the guy you're rooting for.
Yeah,
he's gone.
Yeah, and but it's so great because it's like. I mentioned it a little earlier, kind of getting back to the idea of the Greek myth or whatever. Yeah. She's a siren. She pulls him in. Actually, if you really watch that scene closely, it's a lot of entrapment.
It's all entrapment.
No. I mean, he goes overboard.
He turns into a little kid too. I mean, he throws the bat away.
Yeah.
And he's talking to her like a little kid until he
just trigger. Yeah. And it is funny because it's so obvious that I like that scene because even though the actors were obviously in their 20s when they were making this movie, it kind of does make him feel a bit teenagery. He might know how to talk to a teen girl or another teen street girl, but when he's actually confronted with an adult woman, he doesn't really know.
No, he definitely turned into a kid.
He's like, lady, are you okay?
Too.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it's like that idea that, and it's funny when you see, I saw an interview with James Remar talking about it, and he was like, he basically said, I hated to go. I was, basically he was having such a good, I hated to leave.
No, he didn't.
But he's like, Ajax had to go because
morally,
he stepped over. But not only did he step over, but he lost focus. He stopped.
He said, we're on this exodus. Yeah. You cannot go get something for yourself.
Exactly.
Because you got to protect your other guys.
Yeah.
And he didn't do that and he got punished for it.
Exactly.
And they stuck with it.
Yeah.
The creators, Walter Hill, stuck with it and, didn't bring him back, obviously. Now he's gone. So now you realize the stakes, anybody at any minute
can go, which is great.
And then you had the Lizzie scene. I love
that scene.
And because Rembrandt, it turns out that actor. See, I always thought the way I took that scene, he was the only one that wasn't into what was going on because I'm like, okay, he's a young kid. He doesn't he doesn't have the same passions that the other guys have or whatever. But it turns out, and I don't know if Walter Hill did this on purpose, but that actor was an openly gay actor,
really?
playing Rembrandt.
Okay.
And that was his take on that. That
Right.
this guy has no interest in these women. That's why
Right.
he was able to
Kind
save
of-
his guys because
Yeah.
he wasn't getting caught up in
He wasn't getting caught
the
up
honey
in
trap
the, yeah. Mhm.
that was going on.
Yeah.
And it's things like that and they punctuate that where these women could fight as bad as any guy that
Oh,
any,
sure.
any gang, any guy led.
Oh, yeah.
And then they do that scene where it ends, where they come out of the door and it's one slow motion.
Yeah,
shot.
and smashing through the door.
And they're hitting the women, as hard as they hit anybody
Oh, there's that
else,
scene
and
where he takes that bar stool and he
Yeah,
just crushes it.
That
over
that was
them.
another
Yeah.
slow mo shot. that they pulled.
There was a couple of really good ones though,
Yeah.
and every fight scene in this movie is so well laid out and choreographed. And but I do think it's interesting, how in this movie, the characters kind of move. They're in their own world. They're in their own street world, right?
It's not a real. It could be Earth 2 or some other.
But
place.
the citizens don't exist, really.
Right.
There's one scene at the very beginning where they're all getting, or one guy kind of half scares a lady on the subway, and then there's the young girl behind the newsstand, and then of course, which is and still in my opinion, we want to talk about Mercy and Swan. It's so funny because I really I like the way that their characters kind of evolve into one another.
Right.
In the sense that, here's this chick, she has this, she's living a very loose lifestyle. And, but then there's that great scene where, he's really laying into her. I don't like the way you live and all this. And she says that thing about how, I see what's waiting for me down the street.
I got nothing to lose.
6 kids and cockroaches in the cupboards and all this kind of stuff. I want something now.
Yeah.
And, you really kind of, I think it, it humanizes her and it really kind of gives a bit of, a bit of sympathy toward these kids that are in these situations.
Okay, first of all, you're rooting for the Bennelton Warriors. I mean, they get every shape and color and all that, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It is over the top and it is goofy, especially when they first meet her.
Yeah.
And Swan is doing, you one tough chick or whatever he says. But still, at its heart, and he nails it with the scene in the subway with the prom couple.
Oh, that's the best scene.
That whole
Right. She starts to move her hair.
She's feeling awkward because they're looking at her and she's all dirty and he's like, don't do that. So it had that in there. It had heart that around all this other weird gang, heightened gang stuff that, no, these gangs, the guys they're wearing baseball stuff. Some guys look like, you talk about the rollerblading guy, the baseball team.
Yeah.
They all had themes.
Right.
All heightened stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, and then there's the one team, they're the one gang. They never actually call them by their names in the movie, but in the trailer, they're called the hi-hats. They're the mimes that wear the top hats.
Yeah, with the striped
And I was
shirts.
like, wow, those guys are really scary. Marceau.
Yeah, but again, it gets back to and they talk about how he starts the movie with showing the subway line, the trip they have to make.
That's so great.
And he sets up all the geography around what's going to happen, including the fight scenes. All the geography in the fight scenes makes sense. It's not quick cutting.
Yeah.
Everything's happening right in front of you.
You can tell what's going on.
And it allows you to just respond to the Warriors. You're like, now you're completely immersed in their world until they get back to Coney Island, broad daylight, right? So the whole thing's been at night.
Yeah.
Now they're at Coney Island. They think they're safe. And then that whole scene with Luther in the hearse. That's a hearse that they were in.
I know. Isn't that great?
And the clinking bottles thing was just like...
And the way that they do that, it's funny because there's actually a deleted scene that you can see in some of the extras where originally the movie started in the daytime. And it has Cleon, their leader, who gets taken out right away at the whole, when the Warriors get falsely blamed. That
right, he's the first one to get
right.
taken
So they're leaderless and they're kind of trying to make their way home and all that kind of stuff. It's a great setup. But even he is talking in this deleted scene about how there's actually 120 of them. They're like, I know you guys may not want to do this, but you 9 were chosen out of a 120 street family or something like that. So there's this whole element, but they decided to drop that and just start it at night. And that Wonder Wheel with the lights on it is just amazing.
Coney Island.
But it's also there's so much going on there. I really think that this movie, it's so tight, you know what I mean? And it just clips along. And I just, it is one of those films where, it's not the height of art, but at the same time, there's a lot of quality filmmaking and really kind of crazily, in my opinion, artistic stuff going on in this film.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's what these guys were talking about. I mean, it's Walter Hill. It's Walter Hill's sensibilities and his demeanor on the set. I guess the second AD that they brought in from L.A. had to prove himself because L.A. ADs are supposed to be foo-fooey and they can't handle a New York crew.
Yeah.
And I guess he had to come in and deal with that scene in the park, screaming over, speakers so that all the gang members could learn that the riot that happens. They all have to get out of there.
Yeah.
So all these and not to mention the costume designer who had to go buy all this stuff.
Oh, I know.
And people were walking away with all her stuff. The gangs were taking her stuff.
She was like they were leaving.
But I mean, all those things came together, and I don't know if they knew that they were on this thing, that they had this hit that they had. I have no idea what they were thinking while they were shooting. But all the actors who talk about it now, like Michael Beck and James Remar, it's all with this high level of
I think a lot of
appreciation and the kids. They say their kids all have little warrior leather, stuff.
I believe it. Well, it's funny because I did see in some of the behind the scenes things, Hill talks about how there was another movie which I've actually seen called The Lords of Flatbush.
Yeah, sure.
Which is great.
I think that's Stallone's in there.
Stallone's in that.
And Henry Winkler.
Right before.
Yeah. It's also The Wanderers was another one.
That's another one. Yeah, that was another gang movie. But so they wanted to beat those out is what it came down to. So they had this huge time crunch to get everything done, and they were able to do it and pull it off.
Yeah.
And it started making great money, but then with all the violence and things that came around it, like at first what they did was they got rid of the on the print. They put out a different one. It just said The Warriors, because the original one sheet has like these are the armies of the night. There's 100,000 of there's only 20,000 cops in the city.
Yeah.
And it's like it's very kind of aggressive, and they all look very tough and scary. And so then they took that out, and it was supposed to be like that was supposed to and nothing happened. They were still having incidents, and so by that point, like they said, like 3 weeks in, that like the theater owners were just like, it's not worth the hassle,
Yeah.
Because, and I could get that, it's like,
I mean, was it a hit? I don't remember if it.
They said, according to what I saw on the, what do you call it, in the documentaries and stuff, they said that for the first for the first couple weeks, it was number one.
Yeah,
like it was making money, especially because it wasn't that expensive to make even back then.
Yeah,
and so it was making money, and it was like. And then they just pulled it. They were like, you know what? It's not going to, in the long term, it's not going to be worth the hassle.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they understood that this movie was not going to be The Exorcist. It wasn't going to make $100 million. Right. Even though it might do very, very well for itself based on its budget, et cetera, maybe make, $20 million, which would be great. It wasn't going to be worth the headache. Well, there's that one scene with the prom kids that come in, and that's one of the few times where, quote unquote, the real world even interferes, because you don't even consider the police the real world, you know?
They're another gang.
Yeah, they're another gang. And also at the same time, they're also in blue, so they're kind of like the umpires. And the only time you ever really run into them, which is when they're at the subway stations, or the subway stations, and those are kind of like home base, right? Like those are like the different bases.
Those are bases to get home, right? Because
home
even the DJ says they got to second base. They're trying to get home, right? It's interesting. I never thought of the baseball analogy other than the Furies.
Yeah, and then of course the Furies are the most obvious part of it. But it's like they come in, and I love that part because Mercy just closes her eyes, and then when she opens them, they're gone. It's like it was a dream. It's like it's something that she didn't even notice about. And I do love that part where like Swan, and then he comes back and he's like, this is what we fought all night for, to get back to. Yeah. And you're looking at this, let's face it, kind of dumpy, kind of run down Coney Island of the late 70s,
Yeah.
And,
doesn't look much different Coney Island now.
I don't know though.
I've been there a lot.
Lately?
Yeah.
Really?
I go there. I love Coney Island.
Oh, okay.
And it has everything to do with the movie.
Yeah.
And because of the Wonder Wheel and the whole deal. It's a great place to go take pictures. I've been there when the Russians the polar guys swim in the water.
Oh,
and it's
really?
cold.
Yeah.
I just love, and obviously the Warriors are everywhere down there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, the other interesting thing is that David Patrick Kelly, is that his name?
Yes, yeah.
Would not speak to anybody. The first time he spoke to the actor playing Swan was on that beach for that
Really?
scene. Yep.
Wow.
He stayed away.
He
Didn't
didn't
want to
wanna-
talk to anybody.
didn't wanna
He
get all
wanted to keep
chummy with
He
him,
wanted
huh?
to keep up the
Kind of,
yeah.
yeah.
And so that's the first time they spoke, was that scene at the beach.
That's crazy. Because
That crazy throwing the knife and the gun going on.
Yeah.
I half expected the girl to get shot.
Well, that
behind
was
him.
the funny thing is I've always wanted to know, like,
Swan!
they're relatively closely
They're right.
grouped
If you look at it, they're 2 feet away from each other.
but they're close together.
Yeah.
Even if he missed Swan, he probably would have hit somebody
That's what I'm
else.
saying. He winged
Yeah.
somebody behind Swan. I mean, there's
exactly.
So it was just an interesting. But again,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter
Yeah.
because by that time, you're completely bought in. You're,
Oh, yeah.
you're bought in after the Furies fight.
Oh, yeah.
When you see those Furies come up over the horizon,
It's so
you're
good.
in.
Yeah.
You're in.
And that great music that's coming on. Speaking and going all the way back to the beginning, I have a hard time thinking of I mean, I'm sure there are better technically, but the credit sequence with the way that he shot the subway
tunnel.
moving through the subway stations, having the stuff come at you like that, and just that kind of that great font, like that spray paint font.
Yeah, no, all that,
so good.
and him and his cinematographer really worked hard. This scene where Swan and her kiss down in the.
Oh yeah, they were waiting.
I mean,
for,
that's
like,
a
the
real
to
train
come.
that went
Yeah,
by.
Yeah.
That they planned for that. He had to time his kiss, so they pull away right as the last car goes by.
Yeah.
Cinematographer's lighting it so that it's reflecting light in the thing. I
Yeah.
mean, all that stuff. And in 1979, when me and Tommy Mona were watching this, we didn't care about any of that. All we
Sure.
cared about is Swan could fight and
Yeah.
Ajax could fight, and they all could fight. It turned out,
Sure.
and they were badass.
And then of course that's all shown just perfectly in the bathroom fight.
Well, I was just gonna say, and that ends with Swan throwing that guy into the toilet.
Yeah.
and it's the slow-mo scene where you see it through the door, and he's just like badass
I
looking
know.
like.
He
I'm
goes-
telling you, I walked out of that. And
Yeah.
it was just
It's like, yeah, you think you can fight. It's
yeah,
not, it's not a healthy thing.
No, it's
you know?
not healthy.
It's like I remember the first time I saw Rumble in the Bronx starring Jackie Chan. I was like, oh, I could do all that.
All that parkour stuff.
and-
Evil Knievel, everybody wanted to jump shit. I mean, we were this one though. I remember walking out like pumped. Me and Tommy, and
that fight scene. That's funny because the bathroom fight scene, that is a set.
right. That's
That is
only
one of the
set
few
they
sets they actually had to
made.
build
they had it because of the
because it
room
was
they
just too,
needed to.
it just wasn't big enough
Yeah.
for them to do what they wanted to. But that is like I rewatched that today. Actually, I rewatched the whole thing today. If I have an excuse to rewatch the Warriors, I'm
Right.
taking it. And there's that scene where that is a brutal scene. And don't get me wrong, guys have talked about this. Even the cast talk about it. How, in the moment, guys are getting punched, they're getting knocked down, they're getting knocked out. And then they're fine. They have some bruises, maybe a little blood sugar. But that's movie stuff.
No, Swan, the guy who played Swan, says, "Look, the first hit, we were down. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody would get up from that
Yeah.
stuff. But it's a movie.
Yeah.
I had a little bruise. That bruise
Yeah.
right there. That's the thing that
Yeah. But I did like the way that, like, I did thought it was kind of cool too, as well, that, like, even though they're kind of like this honorable bunch of guys, like, they still don't have a problem with, like, one guy holding the dude. Like, there are scenes where, like, one warrior will just hold somebody and the other guy just wails.
No,
on
they
him.
were gangs.
They're hitting each other from behind.
They were a weird gang
Yeah.
though. Cowboy and
yeah.
the Lothario guy. I forget who his
Well,
his thing was. The Indian Cochise.
Yeah,
He was
Cochise.
dressed exactly the same in Hair. He was in Hair as
Oh,
well. The
really?
musical.
Oh, wow.
With the same outfit.
Yeah. And then the
He must have just
other
brought it from the
African American guy named Snow.
Which one was he?
He was the guy that had kind of like the flat afro that kind of came out.
Yeah. Oh my God.
He was
I
the
forgot
other
about
guy,
him.
not Cleon. who
No,
had
no,
kind of
I
like
know
the
exactly what you're
do-rag
talking
on.
about.
Yeah, but and it's so funny too, that the film just is so like, and you talk about like, it opens up with that huge great scene. You know how they did that whole the mass, everybody running every which way.
He taught him to run in.
Yeah, they ran in,
counterclockwise and clockwise.
circles. Yeah, basically it was like, you guys all run this way.
Just follow the guy in front of you.
And they just kind of like
Yeah.
did that. And if you stop and you really look at it, you can see that's what they're doing. But what a great way to just get around instead of just big mobs
Well,
of guys running
it's
in.
also what Walter Hill did. It's the shots he did with no dialogue. Like he would do people looking, having a look.
Yeah.
Or there's one scene on the subway, the same one we're talking about with the prom, where Cowboy was sleeping, but he's like hugging the bat.
Yeah, he's kinda
and he's
holding-
curled up in the fetal position like a kid
Yeah,
would do
yeah.
if he's, and you realize, okay, these are really teenagers
Yeah.
because they talk about our what do you say?
Youth worker.
Our youth worker.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't have those. The
Yeah.
orphans didn't have
Yeah,
those or
he
something.
must be too bad.
Right.
Well, it's funny because so I'm like a dork super fan on this one. I haven't finished it yet, but I did buy, and I'm now reading the novel by Saul York.
Okay.
It's taken me 20-some years.
How's that one end?
Well, that's the funny thing. It's kind of funny because, the whole story of, I forget the Greek general's name or whatever. One of the characters, basically the character that is Rembrandt, they've all got different names.
Yeah.
But he is reading a comic book based on that story.
Okay.
During the novel. But the guy who wrote the novel, Saul York, he actually worked with like delinquent
Right,
youth
I heard
in New
that,
York,
yeah.
like in the 50s,
Yeah.
late 50s
Yeah.
and early 60s. So, and I read this somewhere that they said that he hated like West Side Story. He hated like all of these kind of like, what's the word? Presentations.
Theatrical. Yeah.
Right. So he wrote this novel, The Warriors, what he thought was much more realistic, and it is. I mean, there's some pretty brutal stuff.
But I mean, are his gangs in that book like presented like they are here, or is this was Walter Hill's creation?
Right. The stylization of the gangs, and also the fact that the gangs are multi-ethnic. Hill even talks about that. He's like, hey, if we really wanted to do this realistically, basically it would just be, black and Hispanic
Irish,
gangs,
Italian,
maybe.
they wouldn't, yeah.
They wouldn't really be in there in the 70s.
The German lady in this doc I watched is a director, and I guess she did a gang related movie with some young actors, and she said in between takes they would do the West Side Story.
Oh, yeah.
And she thought they were making fun of her. Like,
right.
She goes, am I turning this into
wow.
West Side Story? But they were just doing that to relax. Like they're doing all this other stuff. You ever see that Saturday Night Live? Where the gangs are talking about going after the other gangs, and one guy starts doing the West Side Story. And he goes, "What are you doing?" "I don't know. I just feel like it's a great. You got to check that skit out." But that's what she was worried about, that they're making fun of. And this one could have gone way over the top.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you look at West Side Story. You know that's dancing.
Well, yeah,
and all that.
yeah.
This one, given the way they were made, but it worked. Like
Somehow
you
or another,
just bought into the
enough.
enough. Yeah. As soon as you saw the Furies.
Oh yeah.
Because the Orphans, I think that scene was before the Furies, right?
Yeah, the Orphans are the first.
That's the Trumballs,
the
whoever
Trumbull
the guys in the
ACs, those guys are the first ones that
go after
chase
them,
them. Yeah,
right.
and then
the Orphans,
they get dumped in the Orphans neighborhood,
and
that's when
then
they
it's
meet
the
Mercy.
Furies. So
And then,
once the Furies hit, that's when you go, okay. Because you didn't really catch all of that in the big gang scene.
Yeah.
These specific, how they were dressed. There's a one scene at the credits where the
in
guys with
opening,
the pink vests.
Yeah. Some of those guys,
Yeah.
they obviously, but you know what? And it's funny, and maybe this is just me and the super fanness trying to like, what's the word I want to use here?
Justify
it, yeah. But you figure if you were only going to go, like if you only certain members of your gang were going to go to this big conclave, right? And if you guys had like hats that you wore or jackets that you wore sometime, you might actually attempt to wear the same thing to show that you're all from the same gang.
Well, if you're doing the baseball analogy, it's their uniform.
Yeah,
I mean, I know the Furies hits it, nails
yeah,
it.
the Furies
but
is the
if
most
you're the
egregious.
analogy that they're trying to get from first to second to third to home, the cops are the referees. Okay, I get it. The Blues. Hey, Blue.
We call them umpires in
Okay,
baseball.
okay. Oh, that's right. Umpires.
I'm messing with you. I know
Yeah,
you're
no,
a
that's
baseball
fine.
guy.
And then, that analogy works. And she's talking about the DJs doing her whole.
Oh yeah, she's great and like just just to kind of touch base on it. So in 2005, Walter Hill went back and did a director's cut.
He did a
of
comic
this.
book, like he really played up the comic book.
Yeah, he first off he has an animated opening bit. Or actually, it's not even animated; it's just images.
He really explains the mythology behind his mythology behind what the Warriors meant.
And then they had transitions that were like comic book frames.
Right.
And the funny thing is, though, if you watch his interview from 2003 for the new Arrow Blu-ray, he actually is like, he says he did it, but he was like, they were going to do it anyway, so I just went ahead and did it.
Yeah.
I think he means like the producers wanted to do like a big deal because it was maybe the 25th anniversary in 2005, or close to it.
Yeah.
It was also the same time that Rockstar Games actually brought out a Warriors video game that's kind of basically just like Grand Theft Auto. It's funny, I actually have the game, but it doesn't work on my system. Like, I had an Xbox. Anyway, I had an Xbox 360, and in the old days, the old Xbox games were supposed to play on that,
right?
But not all of them did. And of course, the Warriors is one that didn't. So I literally have this game. I got all anyway. But
well,
yeah,
I'm glad I rewatched it.
Oh,
it
me
really
too.
put me back in Brockton, Massachusetts, with Tommy Sacramona, and I got that same feeling I had watching that first fight, that first Fury fight.
It's so
just
great.
Like, and that whole thing. And
you want to hear something really weird? This is like just kind of a weird thing. So it would have been in 79, but the movie came out in 1980, very early 1980. American Gigolo,
right?
Okay, of all films, starring Richard Gere,
right?
Directed by Paul Schrader. There is a scene where Gere's Gigolo throws this guy up against a wall in front of a theater, and it has a giant Warriors
I heard about this,
thing on it.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at that being, well, that's strange. But I mean, it's one of those things where Schrader's a good enough, he's not just going to go, oh, we're at this theater and they happen to have an old Warriors poster here. Because it would have been out roughly the time he was probably shooting it.
Where did Gigolo take place? New York or L.A.?
L.A.
Oh.
It takes place in L.A.
Interesting.
So, but anyway, it's
one
of those things.
If Gigolo takes place in 1980,
it
Warriors
came out in
out
February of 81.
Okay, so Warriors would have been out as a film. So.
But I would think that he's not going to just...
There's a reason for that?
I don't know. Maybe he really liked the Warriors and he just wanted to throw it in there.
He did.
I don't know. It seems like a movie that Schrader might actually like. I mean, even though it's very comic booky and light and things like that.
It's not. I mean, it is light because you look at the Warriors and they're all cuddly and they're the one gang that everybody's it's a Benetton ad.
Yeah,
completely.
Yeah.
And it could have definitely crossed into camp very easily, and for some reason it just.
It doesn't quite ever
It doesn't
go
make
there.
there. It doesn't make it.
It has elements of it, but it
the
never
elements
quite
are all
jumps
there,
into
but
it,
the relationships with the girl and all it's right there to happen, and it didn't happen.
Yeah,
and that's a testament to the obviously the director, the actors, the crew behind it. Everybody, the stuntman who's the guy who. He was the guy who had to put an afro on and do the fall
backwards when Cyrus gets shot. Yeah,
that was him doing that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everybody came together on this thing, and, I really appreciate it. And seeing it again just brought me right back to
it's so good
when I saw it. And, what can I say? I mean, what's the rating on this thing? 6 out of 5?
Oh, easily. Right? Like, this is a movie that just...
I liked it so much. I went and got a tat. See? Look at that.
That's awesome.
My laser just tat. See that? Yeah, that's awesome.
Dang, all right.
I can't wait to ride my little motorbike.
Yeah,
my scooter with this vest on and no shirt on and the tat hanging out.
Exactly, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. I've always wanted to get one of those Warrior vests. They're very expensive.
Oh yeah, like a good one.
Yeah,
like you can go get a pleather one for like $35.
Yeah, no, the ones in Coney Island, because there's museums over there. They got all kinds of.
Oh sure, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, my love of Coney Island came from this film. Like I said, 1979, Tommy Sacramona. I remember right where I was. I remember what I thought as soon as I got out of that thing.
Yeah.
Ajax getting caught was devastating because I loved him. And, here we are. And I just watched James Remar in Django Unchained. He has a scene in Django.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, he's one of the first guys that the Schultz shoots.
Oh, that's
the
right.
horse, one of the horse guys.
Yeah, that's right.
That was Remar.
Yeah, that's right, James Remar. He's a guy that's been around forever.
Yeah,
he's
very
great.
intense dude.
Yeah, he's great.
All right, so 6 out of 5. That's an average of 12, right?
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
That's the best movie we've seen so far.
That's a 6, yeah. So listen, thanks a lot. I'm glad you came by. I hope you enjoyed your ponies.
Oh yeah, you know what? I'm gonna have another.
Yeah, have a pony, and we'll do a little clanking glasses when you get 3 down your gullet.
Exactly.
So, all right.
But this movie is without a doubt.
Cheers. I'll cheers with this. Here you go.
This movie is without a doubt just like. It's a true cult film, and it has stood the test of time. It's like I can't tell you how many people I've spoken with that are like, I love that movie.
Yeah, they still say they show it to younger audiences now, and the younger audiences still get into it as much as. I mean, it's the theatrics of the whole thing, and like I said, it doesn't drop into farce.
Yeah,
it just doesn't. And then we've done Streets of Fire.
Yeah,
and that's another one that didn't do as well as this one, but man, it's got some ideas going on in there that are amazing. And Walter Hill, Alien. You think of all the things. Did he do Lethal Weapon? That's not Walter Hill.
No, that's Richard Donner.
Okay.
Yeah. But Walter Hill actually wrote The Getaway that Sam Peckinpah directed. And then one of the movies that I love...
Southern Comfort I love, too.
Oh, Southern Comfort's so good.
Yeah.
And just to watch one of like his crazy shoot-'em-up movies, like there's a movie with Nick Nolte and Powers Booth called Extreme Prejudice.
Extreme Prejudice.
It's almost impossible to find.
Like on Laserdisc. It's back here
God,
somewhere. Yeah, I got
awesome.
it. Yeah.
That is such a great film.
Yeah.
Like, I mean... That is his like ode to Peckinpah.
Well, I mean, I remember Southern Comfort. There's lots of slow-mo in that one too.
Yeah,
lots
Southern Comfort's great.
And it's same idea. So, thanks for coming by. I don't know what the next one will be. What do you think the next one will be?
I don't know, man.
Should we do a current film or we'll figure it out?
Yeah, we'll figure.
We just saw The Conclave.
Oh, how was it?
I liked it quite a bit. Good, great acting. Interesting. Just good film. It's good to go to a film that's an adult film. Right. It's just conversation. Quite liked it.
Cool.
So hope to see a few more. Theater experience is weird though. People, I mean, they're not treating theaters very well. I'm talking about other customers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's tough. People think they're still in their living room.
Oh, yeah, that's too bad.
It's a little crazy.
I'm trying to think. The last couple of movies I've seen have been like some of those like Fathom event type movies, like you know, Saturday and Sunday. Right. You know,
well, you saw Megalopolis or whatever.
I did see Megalopolis, like
Megaflopolis.
Yeah, but I saw that literally at like 11 in the morning or something.
Jesus.
I was actually kind of shocked at how many people were there though. Really? For like literally for like a 12:10 show.
Yeah,
there was literally like, and it had been out for a couple of weeks, so they were obviously just fulfilling whatever contractual demands that they had to show it for 3 weeks. They were, it literally had a 9 a.m. show and a 12:10 show. Yeah. I was like, well, of course it's not going to find an audience this way.
Well, that's not good.
The only reason I saw it was I happened to have the day off. It was like Columbus / Indigenous Peoples Day.
You had a day off. Yeah. You had that day off.
Somehow or another.
Not a lot of us did.
No, somehow or another, my kids had to go to school and my wife had to go to work, but I had that day off, which is normally not the case.
All right. Well, next one. Don't know what it'll be, but
you're
always welcome.
Let's come up with something soon, man.
All right, Chris.
Thanks
for coming.
Of course.